Hello, Wall of Silence listeners. This is a bonus episode featuring material that was cut from the previous episode, The Presentment of Bishop Stuart Ruck, Part 1, The Evidence. It consists of me reading from the letter I wrote to my bishop explaining how I do not believe this podcast creates a conflict of interest, along with audio of former Archbishop Foley Beach addressing a matter between himself and two ACNA bishops who he at one time raised concerns about having their own conflicts of interest. We cut out that material for the sake of time in the main episode. This is an excerpt of bonus material that you can hear in full if you support the podcast on Patreon. That bonus episode also contains audio of me reading at length from the letter I wrote to my bishop, much of it around the subject of canonical obedience and how it relates to my decision to continue doing the podcast. I also decided to release the full interview of Neftali Mata from the Holy Post podcast, since it has been removed from the internet and podcast streaming services, and I think people should be able to hear his story in context and be able to judge for yourselves that my condensing and editing of it didn't change anything in his overall story. I'm happy to say that if you don't want to sign up as a monthly Patreon supporter of the podcast, you can now purchase the bonus material individually for a fee. Just go to www.patreon.com/Wall of Silence podcast. There'll be a link in the show notes. There you will find the current bonus episode called Canonical Obedience, Conflicts of Interest, and the Holy Post interview, along with other bonus material such as from Joanna Rudenborg's and Helen Kuning's episodes. I have to say, my favorite bonus episode is from Stephen Backhouse, which includes the full interview I gave with him before the podcast launched, and contains an incredible amount of insight about church abuse and the power of those in authority. Again, if you want to become a monthly backer of the podcast or simply purchase some of the bonus episodes individually, just go to www.patreon.com/Wall of Silence podcast. Before I get to the bonus material, I wanted to note an observation that occurred to me in the wake of the last episode's release. While I was looking at my overall statistics for the podcast, I noticed, really for the first time, that my podcast host provides a gender breakdown of who listens to the podcast. I was somewhat astounded to see the divide was not evenly split, not even close. What do you think it would be? Mostly men or mostly women? Well, as of today, 67.4% of my listeners are women, and 20.6% are men. And then there's also 12% labeled as unspecified. By a wide majority, mostly women are listening to this podcast. Does that tell you anything? Let's not dive headlong into any logical fallacies, but how would you interpret that statistic? It reminds me of what I said in a previous episode, of how we so often ignore the suffering of others until something similar happens to us. Maybe men, especially those in the ACNA, just can't understand why a podcast about abuse within the church is important enough to learn about, let alone to be willing to speak up about it and then address it with our own church leaders. I will say this. Something tells me my fellow male priests and deacons in the ACNA are not listening in droves. If you are listening right now, though, and you're a layperson or you are ACNA clergy, and there is someone you think should be listening to the podcast, and it wouldn't create a conflict of interest, this is my encouragement for you to make a request and explain to them why you think it would be important for them to listen. I do want to note, though, that the very first episode of this podcast has now surpassed 1,500 total listens, and there are 3 other episodes that are close to getting 1,000 listens. So, thank you everyone who's taken the time to share this podcast, to listen, and those of you who's contacted me expressing encouragement and support. Thanks so much. Now on to the bonus material. In the wake of this meeting, as I sought counsel about the many complicated and fraught issues addressed to me within it, I eventually wrote a letter in response to my bishop, which he has still not read or seen. Here's the section I wrote with the counsel of others about the potential conflict of interest. To quote, "I am not convinced this is an honest concern. It was communicated to me that people within the Diocese of Quincy were involved with the Ruck trial and may be influenced by my podcast. Even if that's true, how does that present a conflict of interest? I have no investment in the outcome of Bishop Ruck's trial, nor am I tasked with safeguarding its procedures or credibility. If members of the provincial tribunal believe they should refrain from consuming news or opinion pieces related to Bishop Ruck's trial to maintain their impartiality and credibility, they may do so. But providing commentary and information about a pending ecclesiastical trial, almost all of which has already been made public, does not create a conflict of interest. Also, how is my podcast any different than other publications that have reported and commented on the trial and events surrounding it? If every bishop needs to avoid partaking of outside media discussing the facts of the case because of their trial responsibilities, then they would specifically and consciously need to choose to not engage with those publications, or have the wisdom to recuse themselves from the trial process. Along with all this, it must be pointed out there are already numerous people involved with the trial that have conflicts of interest, either based on what they already know about the trial or based on their relationship to Ruck. In fact, it has been reported to me from priests and others who have contacted me that a number of the bishops and priests consider themselves personal and close friends of Bishop Ruck, or devotees to him. In fact, 4 bishops signed a request from Ruck, appealing the presentment going to trial. Another example is Canon Phil Ashey, who Archbishop Foley has already asked to recuse himself from the trial process due to his prior work with Bishop Ruck. Shouldn't they automatically recuse themselves from being part of the trial long before a podcast about it is forced to shut down? I am not sure why my supposed conflict of interest is an issue, while others are not." End quote. Please note, in my letter I provide links to the request from the 4 bishops who appealed the presentment, as well as the request that Canon, now Bishop Phil Ashey, recuse himself from the trial, who, it is important to add, is still listed as one of the lawyers on the provincial tribunal. These links will be included in the show notes for this episode, if you would like to look at them. 2 of those bishops are Julian Dobbs and Clark Lowenfield, whom you can hear Archbishop Foley Beach apologizing to about a major disagreement they had, but whose details are left vague in this video from Provincial Council in 2023.
I'd like to address a subject that has drawn considerable attention in our province. As you no doubt know by now, there's a case before the provincial tribunal. It has drawn my attention because of the importance of both of effectively protecting against and responding to possible misconduct in our province, and of the provincial investigative and disciplinary processes under the Title IV of our canons. The Provincial Tribunal has released an initial decision on issues of jurisdiction and recusal that I and other officers of the province had raised. The tribunal requested that this decision be publicly posted on the ACNA website, which we did. I also posted our motions that the tribunal decision was addressing. I wanted our province to be able to know and understand better the positions that were being debated. So I then also responded to this decision with a statement that was distributed to the province, and many of you have read it. That statement, I'm sorry to say, seems to have itself been a cause of angst and dismay to some brothers and sisters throughout the province, which was not my intention. There can be and are differences of opinion about the important matters that the tribunal decision addresses. But those should not obscure some important points about the provincial tribunal. It's supposed to be an independent court, and as such serves an important role in our life together. It serves as a final court of appeal in the discipline of deacons, priests, and bishops. It also has a defined role in clarifying the meaning of our Constitution and canons. This role was deliberately given to it and defined by the founders of the province and the framers of our Constitution and canons. The present differences of opinion have included important issues about when the tribunal should become involved in clergy disciplinary matters under Title IV of the canons. This disagreement was so serious, although in good faith, that it compelled the College of Bishops to clarify those issues together, as I'll explain more fully in a minute. This was not the first time there's been vigorous disagreement within the province. And unless the Lord returns in the next couple of minutes, it probably won't be the last. But all of us involved are united, not only in our partnership for the gospel, but also in our mutual affection for each other and for the Lord's work through this province. The presiding officer of the provincial tribunal is Bishop Julian Dobbs. He and I have served together as bishops of this church for many years. He's both a colleague and a friend, as is Bishop Clark Lowenfeld, who is also an elected member of the provincial tribunal. I believe they are both good and godly bishops. I've apologized to both of them for implying that my public comments that was not the case, although we have profound disagreement at the time. And they forgave me, which I was very grateful. They're serving with 5 other judges on the tribunal, both clergy and lay people, elected every 3 years by this council and charged with serving the province and ultimately our Lord Jesus Christ. I do not doubt that they all want the best for this province, even when we must grapple with significant disagreements about important issues. But I want you to know this morning that with the leadership of the College of Bishops, we have found a way forward through this constitutional challenge we've been facing. And that is good news.
It appears that Foley was not sorry for publicly addressing what he believed to be an overstep of the tribunal's authority, but rather, it seems, he regretted that his readers interpreted his frustration at several bishops' refusal to recuse themselves as a judgment on those bishops' moral character. Interestingly, the former archbishop's June letter to the province that brought to the surface all of these disagreements has since been removed from the ACNA's online news archive. Thus, it's not available for you to read if you wanted to. Again, if you'd like to support The Wall of Silence as a monthly backer or by purchasing individual bonus episodes, you can go to www.patreon.com/Wall of Silence podcast. Thank you for listening.